Buongiorno, everybody. It's Jimmy and I. We're back with Too Much Popcorn.
Arrivederci.
Arrivederci. Too Much Popcorn, the movie review podcast where Jimmy and I watch a movie, and then we sit down and we talk about the things we liked, things that we didn't like, the things that were great about the movie, the things that could have done better. This week, we're talking about the hit 2009. That's right, it's a classic. We're going way back into the vault on this one. We went to Disney, we kicked in their Disney vault, and we said, oh wait, no, this movie's not in here. Sorry, guys.
We welded it back together with the aliens welding materials.
Inglourious Basterds, the movie that's got Brad Pitt, Christoph Waltz, the French lady that Jimmy just said her name and I can't remember because we don't
Melanie
do any.
Laurent.
That's right, Melanie Laurent. We don't do any research or... Really, the only thing we do is we watch the movie and then we talk about it. So,
hey,
we're gonna
I
give
could have told
opinion.
you BJ Novak was in this one before
Very
looking
true.
it up on that one. So,
And Michael
he's in
Fassbender. And
this movie's got a whole. I think Daniel Gruel is the guy's name, who's now been in quite a few other things. But what a whole cast, a whole ass cast in this movie, huh?
You know, I said it when we were watching the movie that Quentin Tarantino kind of reminds me of Wes Anderson in the way that he makes movies. And I'm standing by that. Like, the fact that he's got all these, like, silly little camera things he does and just the little, like, topics that he makes movies about and the fact that he just gets everybody who's anybody to be in his movies, even if it's just
Definitely.
a voiceover by Samuel L. Jackson. He's in the movie.
He's in there. They snuck him in there.
They snuck him in there. You didn't think... You're looking around for him. You're like, I don't see Samuel L. Jackson. And then his voice comes in, as we all know. And you're like, there he is. That's him.
See, now you're already saying everyone's already seen this movie. So why are we even doing this episode here?
Why are we doing this? Well, if you've seen this movie and you want to know what we think about it, we'll tell you what we think about it. And then at the end of this episode, we're going to say, hey, maybe you should watch it. Maybe you shouldn't watch it. Maybe if you did watch it, you should watch it again. Maybe you shouldn't. I don't know. So
Maybe it's been over 10 years.
yeah. Did you see this movie in 2009 with your best friend and your dad? And then it comes on Amazon Prime and you're like, should I watch that again? Well, we're going to tell you if you should rewatch it.
Yeah. And that's what we're here to do today. Quentin Tarantino's seminal hit film.
This is it. This is the movie that put him on the map. I can't think of another Quentin Tarantino movie before this one that was...
He did movies before and after this one? No.
I don't think so.
I highly doubt it. Can't follow up this with anything but... Oh. I mean, where do we even begin with this? It is an alternate history, World War II, Nazi fighting, Nazi scalping, just sort of, again, ensemble cast. What a joy to look at this film. What a joy to witness the incredible writing of this film. Aaron, while watching it, just continuously was mentioning, he's like, man, they really wrote the hell out of this one, huh? Because it's so good. And it is what specifically Aaron was like, this is a dialogue heavy movie. And if you are not prepared for basically a novel's length of dialogue, then boy, have we got a treat for you, because this is the film where they wholly take a book's length of dialogue and shove it down your throat in such quick succession that you're getting literally chapters, and they provide you point for point stuff that's going on. Conversationally, there's just so many titles of not only actors like in credits and stuff, but specifically, I think it was Spieglitz's character gets an on-screen like title for just how badass Spieglitz is. There's something so charming and like you were saying, a little Wes Anderson-esque in it sort of is like displayed in like a box. It's like within its own thing where you kind of just get to like flip through this amazing flip book of stuff that Quentin Tarantino and the whole crew just are like, here you go. Here you go.
Yeah, I think that's a good place for us to start, is just the fact that this is a very dialogue-heavy movie. And folks, if you're out there and you're not a person who enjoys subtitles, I'm sorry, there's a lot of subtitles in this movie. The majority of this movie is in the natural languages of German and French, because that's where, and we get some Italian, but you know that's in there too.
Just un poco Italian.
Un poco. But yeah, so most of the characters speak the languages of the country that they're in, you know, either being France or German, and it makes for a dialogue heavy movie where you're reading all the subtitles. And if you're somebody who speaks German, well, then you're lucky and you don't have to read everything. But
if you're trilingual,
yeah,
how cool of a movie would this be, huh?
But you're still sitting there and you're listening to just long drawn on periods of people. The first 22 minutes, I did some preparation for this movie. I made sure to put a little bookmark in there.
Look at you time stamping things.
The first 22 minutes of the movie is all dialogue of mainly just two characters talking back and forth about a certain topic. And we've gone on record in other episodes saying, oh my God, there was just this period where people were talking and it was nonstop and it was so annoying and I just wanted them to get to the action. But somehow this movie takes dialogue and makes it the action. It's a combination of Quentin Tarantino's camera work, the just presence that these actors have on scene where you're looking at them, and then also just like the story of like, you know, oh, who's gonna prevail in this, and like you're sitting there, you bought a ticket for the whole 100% of the seat and you're only using 10% because you're like, what's gonna happen next?
Yeah, I think it's so important that first scene is so like such an establishment of Christoph Waltz's character in terms of you learn everything you need to know about this heinously evil SS officer in that first conversation, and his weird sense of like, I've let you live for whatever reason, you know, like there's just this, he is so ominously terrifying in his execution of this like task that he's like, you know, he has a file folder like, oh, I have to write their ages down, so just in case, even though my plan all along is to murder them under the floorboards. Like there's such an exacting scientific nature to the way that Christoph Waltz's character is written that this is the film that for me, I didn't know Christoph Waltz at all before this. So for him to just be this guy and be this terrifying, but also at the same time embodying this witty, sing-songy kind of like dichotomous character, I was so terrified because I was like, I don't know. You obviously can't trust him. He's doing horrible, horrible things, but he's enrapturing with every word, and you just have to listen.
Yeah, it's Christoph Waltz. He's a goofball. And, you know, I'm in the same boat that when we went to go see this in the movie theater when it was first out, like, I didn't know who he was, but, like, he comes on screen and you're like, oh, this is a bad guy, but, like, he's also kind of charming. But, oh, God, he's a bad guy.
He's really bad.
Really bad. I remember seeing the trailers for this movie and being like, yo, Quentin Tarantino's making a movie about killing Nazis? I'm about that. All the trailers were like, here's all the action scenes. Here's this one and this one and this one. You're like, oh, it's going to be nonstop action. And then you go see this, and then you're sitting there for 22 minutes reading, and you're like, he tricked me into reading. I'm reading a book.
I'm sitting in a dark ass theater reading a book here, huh?
But it
Quentin.
but it works, and then it goes on to the next scene, and it's just more people talking, and you're like, what is going on here? I thought this was gonna just be nonstop killing Nazis, but it works. I don't know. I think a lot of it is just the characters are so interesting, the topic's interesting. There's a drive, there's this mission that they're all working towards in their own way that comes together in the very end to, pan out however it does.
Wink, wink.
Wink, wink. How does it turn out?
I'll never say. I'll never tell.
But yeah, and then you do get those times where they're talking, but then it cuts to the action. Like, it starts with Christoph Waltz doing his interview in the very beginning. 22 minutes later, it's Aldo Rain talking to his members of his team. And then after that, it's them conducting their first mission where they've got the Nazis. Well, there's the Hitler part, and then there's them talking to the Nazis and interrogating them, where you start getting the action. Then you're like, oh,
yes.
there's the Tarantino, squibs everywhere.
Yes, I think it's actually it's way later in the film, but the perfectly like how to pinpoint what this movie is about is that one really quick cut where it just tells you that they used to ambush like Nazi patrols.
Oh, yeah.
Dressed as officers, and it quick cuts to them just being like, hey, stop the car. Just blowing them away. And the movie essentially full on does that throughout its whole thing, but it's like compressed into this 2-second little clip where you're like, here's this very interesting concept we've shown you, and now here's the resulting extreme violence that Quentin Tarantino is known for exhibiting in most of his movies. And so to have that restraint of basically being so dialogue heavy and the action actually being in the words, and like Shoshana being this, undercover French, she escaped 4 years prior. So every conversation that she has with like Goebbels or Christoph Waltz or anybody really in that like Nazi sphere that wants her immediately killed. And there's that one like really quick, she's like breathing really heavily, and it's like extremely intense because you're like, if anyone suspects you at all, you're the squibs at the feet of, the bastards or Nazis or anybody, right?
I also think that there's a good use of storytelling where, we get introduced to Aldo and his team. So the movie sets up that there's Lieutenant Aldo Rain, who's Brad Pitt's character, and he's got his, members of his team that are supposed to go in and kill a whole bunch of Nazis and cause, and disrupt
100 scalps.
Yeah, get each one of them owns him 100 scalps, and they're supposed to disrupt the Nazi army. And so you're like, all right, well, clearly we're getting introduced to the team, and the next like 2 hours is just going to be different missions that they're going on, killing a whole bunch of Nazis, squibs everywhere, blood, guts, blah, blah. But what does it do? It cuts to Hitler in his high command office. He's smacking on the table. No, not 99999. And so clearly it shows that, without showing every successful mission, yeah, he's been so super successful such that the highest member of the Nazi army is pissed off. And I was noticing this time, I was like, hey, that's actually really good storytelling because you don't have to spend the whole movie. And then you can just show that, like, hey, he's been doing a good job, and clearly whatever he's going to do next is going to be possibly successful.
You know what's funny? I think there is a cut of this movie that's like an hour longer that shows them just like montaging through, just like destroying all these people.
Oh,
and
buddy, I would buy that.
It's just like Quentin just he's going up full squib. It's still perfectly written and all this stuff, but it's just like the height of violence for an hour.
Oh, please.
That's out there.
I would, Quentin, we'll kick down a different vault. We'll get in there. We'll find it.
Because you know what? He'd do a sick needle drop of something, too. I mean, we got David Bowie in this movie. The songs are off the hook. He's got some not original Ennio Morricone, like, score because of whatever conflict is happening. But the fact that there's like just straight up spaghetti Western music for these Nazi killers is so good. A big chef's kiss on that one.
Oh, big chef's kiss on that one.
Just like you said, it's like there's a perfect amount of showing without telling and not showing, but it's the way that it's told in terms of like the Nazi head scars, or like what character, whoever, like either Hitler is talking to someone or Christoph Waltz is talking to someone. It's like you're interweaving this perfectly executed storyline that to me is the quintessential quintessential way to tell a sweeping like World War II story, right? In terms of this could be a war epic that feels so large, like you have armies involved, but we've already taken it to an elite squad that is specifically hired or, you know, like ordered to do this specific thing. So we've already taken out the potential for like hundreds and hundreds of other extras or people. Like these are behind enemy lines. This is a secret thing you're trying to get to. So we've taken out in a lot of World War II movies, like I'm thinking even like Dunkirk and 1912, like there's just so many faces that like flash by during that movie that you can't care about, because you know that it's like you have these two characters or these, you know, couple four characters. And Inglourious Basterds does the perfect thing where you're like, no, it's just these guys. There's no one else. And then we'll put in Michael Fassbender for a teeny bits of time. But really, you just have to worry about the line that they give you right in that opening sequence of The Bastards. It's so good.
Yeah. Yeah, and to go along with that, they build the characters such that you're sitting there and you're like, hey, I am, you know, totally weaved in their story, and I care about them and I want them to succeed. And it's like, there's really no major character development or plot development that comes from them as characters. It's just like they're caricatures, and they're fun caricatures, and they're just fun to watch, and you love to watch them on screen.
It's almost like there was a web series we missed that included like an episode introducing each of the characters and like their exploits before joining the squad or something.
Well, it kind of makes me think almost like of a Avengers situation where each one had their own movie, or their, you know,
exactly.
Like, to put yourself in perspective, like, you know, this is the 1940s and there was like audio dramas of each one, and then this is like the Avengers moment of teaming up, and, you know, now they're out there to stop Thanos, but it's Hitler. And we kind of get that with the Hugo Stiglitz little montage of, you know, he's the only character that
you get him.
You get him. You don't get
That's
anybody else. They have another German on the team, but he is the only one that they're like, hey, we're cutting to him and we're showing you his backstory because it rules.
Yes. And like multiple times, they're like, we're going to flesh Stiglitz out so much that you will care too much about him.
Yeah. We have another character called the Bear Jew, and he's awesome, but he doesn't get a little montage backstory.
He gets introduced as if he is this monolithic character, and then he comes out and he's like, hey, I got this voice. And you're like, oh no.
He's from Brooklyn.
And it's literally one of the funniest little like turnabouts, because he is introduced as this like horror character with the bat tinking against a wall, and you're like, oh, this is gonna be like some guy, and he's gonna come out and be like, you know, he'll have like a roar of some kind, but he's just like, hey, pizza.
Yeah, they got John Mulaney to voice Eli Roth. I don't know how they did it, but they did.
Well, Eli Roth, they just dubbed him out. It's really funny.
It's great.
And I mean, just funny movie in general. Like, per usual, Quentin Tarantino is as quippy. You know, whoever was writing this, it's usually him and a couple other people, I think. But this movie, I crack up at just some of the stuff that happens. And there's so many like sight gags and like really quick, very like slapsticky sort of stuff going when they pull the like drunk guy away from the officer's table in the bar, and he's just like he's like yanked off. It's so funny and reminiscent of like an old film.
Or even the other one that we were laughing at was when they're talking to the SS officer at that table, and Hugo Stiglitz is having that flashback of getting whipped by an SS officer.
Yes.
And then the SS officer slaps him on the chest and it makes the same noise.
Yes. It's incredible.
Yeah, you can see the disdain in his eyes, and it fucking sells it.
It's so good. Stiglitz. And that was like not a character that, when I'm remembering 2009, did not stand out to me, even though now I'm seeing it. It's like, he is like the title. He gets his own thing.
Yeah.
He's like Christ-like he's the featuring Stiglitz, like he's on the Vegas Strip. Catch him now. It's so funny how much of him you're like supposed to just get in this time.
Yeah.
It's wild. And no one else. There's no Arlo backstory or any Aldo. Yeah, it's crazy.
Which is incredible because like he is really in his own way. Like he's got all these like he's got the funny accent. He's got
he's got the moonshine,
the neck scar, and it's like, well, how'd he get that? Obviously, there's a story behind that, but they're not going to tell you.
Was there a graphic novel we missed? What's going on,
dude? I don't know, but I would love some like daytime television, Saturday morning cartoon style episodes of just each one of them having their own backstory.
That would be sick.
Yeah.
I think wholly unnecessary given the length of the film and how everything sort of plays out. But I'd take it. I'd take it anyways.
And how fucking wild would it be if they're like, hey, remember 2009 when Inglourious Basterds came out? Well, now we're putting this out. And you're like, oh, okay, yeah. Hell yeah.
Sure.
I'll take it.
That's Quentin's next move. He's like, I'm going to make the film critic movie, and then I'm moving to Saturday morning cartoon.
I think one of the other sight gigs that worked really well in this movie, because we were busting up over it, was in that same scene where they're interrogating the Nazi officers and they're introducing all the bastards in their own way. They, have the one sergeant, they're asking him where the artillery is. He dies. Spoilers. Not really spoilers.
It's early enough in there.
Yeah. But then they bring the other officer up and he starts giving away where all the positions of everything is.
Yes.
And they're doing the pans. They have the three characters and then they've got the map in the middle of them. And they're doing this like goofy Wes Anderson style pan in between each thing.
Well, it's not even just Wes Anderson, but it's like fully just like a comedic, you've like entered the dog brain of the camera. That's
yeah.
Like, what's up there?
Each one is, Brad Pitt's character, the German officer, the guy that's in the middle who's translating for the German officer. The German officer says something, the guy translates, cuts to Brad Pitt, and it's just cutting to each one of them. And it's funny, and it's those kind of things that just keeps the dialogue going. It's still just people talking, but it works.
Yeah, it's displayed in such a way that you're sort of disoriented by how funny it is, because what they're talking about is, like, well, we want to kill this Nazi encampment. Can you like help us out so that we can like do this and let you go? And it's like very serious military sort of triage sort of stuff, and then the camera's just like whipping around like whoop, 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 whoop. It's so funny to have those moves be incorporated into such like a non-serious scene but with serious implications.
Because
it's really good.
It also follows the other Nazi officer dying. And hey, you know what? I'm going to spoil it. He gets his head bashed in by a baseball bat, and it fucking rules. It's great.
Yeah.
Kill Nazis.
That scene alone is so, again, like indicative of what you should expect with the movie, because you get the first hit like brutally just bashing that guy, and he goes basically like catatonic on the ground, and then it pulls out, and you're still seeing him wail on it. But so you have this like distant violence that you definitely know is happening, and then you're back here away from it like, oh yeah, they're doing that a lot, huh?
Yeah.
It's great.
Well, and it's funny too because it makes me think of, you know what, this is probably gonna be spoilers, but the Walking Dead, when they did the Negan scene and he bashes several characters in the head with a baseball bat.
Oh yeah.
And like I remember watching that and being like, oh, that's that one's hard to watch. That sucks to watch. But then this one,
season got intensely brutal for me.
Yeah.
I there was so much that you're just like, oh no, did that leg just fully separate? Horrible stuff.
Yeah. But they bash people in the head with a baseball bat and you're like, oh, ooh, oh no, oh no. But then this movie is like, hey, we're gonna do it, but to a Nazi, and you're like, ha ha, yes, give me more of this.
It is like the basest desire to just see these, and they're actors, of course, but
Yeah.
you're like, kill them, just destroy them, my bastards, go.
Yeah, crimes against any human, bad to watch. But you know what? What were Nazis doing? Crimes. Fuck them all day long. Hot take. Hot take alert. Nazis suck.
It sucks that that's a hot take in 2023, but here we are.
Here we are. Our new, very political podcast. That's right, guys. We're switching it up. The new political podcast where we say, hot take alert. Nazis, they're not great. They, in fact,
Yeah, get over here, current pundit of something. We're talking about politics now.
all right.
Come on over.
Yeah, cut in that sound clip from the person who's running for that office of something.
Yeah. We got all the ads for your latest political candidate right after these messages.
Political ads.
Aren't political ads, I promise.
All right, if you're still out there and you're still listening after all those hot takes, welcome back. And hey, we got more hot takes like, well, no, let's just get back to talking about the movie. That's right, we're still a movie review podcast.
Oh, you were still doing that joke? Sorry, I left.
I think everybody
fully
else did. It's just you and I now.
Oh, cool.
Whoops.
Well, perfect.
We had a couple listeners. They're gone now. Oh no.
Oh no. Wait, is that good though? Maybe
Well,
it was the ads.
I don't think it was the fact that they were in contention of what I was saying. I think it was
Of
just
your
that the
hot
bit
take.
wasn't funny.
It's just that it wasn't funny, and they said, "Yeah, we get it. It's the coldest take of all time."
Yeah.
Here we are, talking about Inglourious Basterds.
What else worked? I
mean, everything.
yeah.
Everything. Oh, I really want to talk about the ending sequence, but it's so good. I can't.
Well, okay, I'll phrase it this way. So we've been talking a lot about how this movie's a lot of talking. That's not a surprise. You're gonna hear a lot of people talk. You're gonna hear a lot of people talk in languages you don't understand, unless you do.
That's okay.
And then that's good for you.
Hey, sit back down. You got to read.
We'll put subtitles on our podcast. It all builds up to this mission that the bastards are working for, where something's gotta happen. No spoilers for this one, but
But
we
it
can say,
involves the first character that we see spared by
Yes.
Christoph Waltz, which is very important because she literally is the main character. We have Shoshana.
yes, and you know the bastards. They're setting out to. I guess this isn't much of a spoiler. They're setting out to kill the Nazi high command because they're all going to be at this certain event. It's got to do with movies.
You know how Quentin Tarantino loves those movies.
He loves those movies. He's a movie guy.
He's a movie guy. He make the movie.
And so you got them working towards their mission. And then in the back half of the movie that's kind of there, but not really, you got Shoshana, who's leading her expedition to do the same exact thing. She also wants to kill all those damn Nazis. And although you would think it, you know, she's not aware of their plot. They're not aware of her plot. But, it all comes together in this culminating final scene where you've been sitting there for 2 hours and 15 minutes and you've been reading this whole time and you're like, hey, there's been little bits of shooting and stuff. I'm still totally intrigued. And then it just culminates in this final scene where everything just starts going off the rails. And boy, it happens.
What a finale of all finales. It can only be said that all of the dialogue leading up to it is the perfect sort of shot chaser situation you have, in terms of you take a shot, you get a bunch of dialogue, you get, again, every word spoken is important for pulling off how the end happens. And the fact that the end happens at all and in such a fashion is such a good payoff for the whole movie telling you that this is what we want to do. And just because all of the characters want it to happen, and therefore their motivations now align with the viewer, and the viewer says, well, we gotta make this happen. And so all the characters are like, well, we're gonna make it happen. And then Christoph Waltz comes in and says, I'm gonna help make it happen. And then we get the ending that we will not spoil. We cannot spoil it. We'll spoil Walking Dead because that season specifically that Aaron is mentioning was old enough that I was watching it, so I don't even know. But this movie, if you haven't seen it, 2009, I don't know. I'm going to hold my tongue and tell you whether to watch it or not, but we won't spoil the ending just in case you haven't watched it, right?
I think one of the things I actually kind of enjoyed in this movie is when you and I watch a movie, we're always looking out for Chekhov's guns or Chekhov's blank in something. And we always find them, and we love to point out that, hey, that's Chekhov's something, and it's going to come back in this.
Shoshana.
Yeah. And, each time something came up that seemed like it was going to be a Chekhov's gun, I was almost ready to point it out, but then it pays off almost so quickly that it's not even a Chekhov's gun. It's just like a prologue to what's going to happen. Like so Shoshana, her character, wants to send that message to the Nazis, and to do that, she has to record a bit of film and put it at the end of this movie. And you mentioned at one point, you're like, oh yeah, she's kind of like, foreshadowing the film that she needs to make. And then she just says it like as you were saying that. And I was like,
so funny.
Yeah. And it's like, there's so many things in there where it's like, oh, Brad Pitt's got a big ass knife. Is that Chekhov's knife? But no, then like 20 seconds later, he's using that big ass knife.
He's just cutting somebody's face open. Yeah. It is literally like shot payoff immediate.
Yeah.
There's no downtime for when you've learned something. It is immediately relevant to the characters, and therefore there's immediate payoff. You're like, oh, well, there's another officer in this bar. Oh, he's immediately very important to everything that's going on.
And then even if it's not like immediate payoff, it's close enough, and you like know it's coming. Not even in a way where it's kind of like a spoiler. Like they do the Bastards, they link up with Michael Fassbender's character, and they're supposed to make contact with this double agent. The place that they're meeting is a bar that takes place in a basement, and they sit there the whole time going, oh, who fucking meets in a basement? That's a bad position for a... And they're just saying that it's a bad place to have a meeting. It's a bad place to have a meeting. And you're like, oh, clearly it's going to be a bad place to have a meeting. And you know what happens? It's a bad place to have a meeting. It's not a good place. And so, yeah, it's like you see it coming. And I really enjoyed it because it was almost just like Quentin Tarantino thumbing his nose to the whole idea of Chekhov's gun and just being like, look, I'm going to put these things in there. It's not even foreshadowing. It's just they're in there and they're going to pay off. And just don't even wait. It's paying off right now.
Exactly. It is spitting in the face of the gun on the mantelpiece, because why is it up there? It should be in someone's hand pointed at someone's crotch, and there it is. There's no need to veil something far away out of reach. You just give it to the character, And then the character's like, I have this now? Okay. uh, Champagne? Like, it's just immediate to very close payoff in terms of excellent writing, having the stakes laid out to you in this way that then clearly you're like, I need this to happen. And it does feel like a movie of immediacy where you're like, they're pushing this movie premiere and you're like, well, why are the Germans doing this? I guess they need to get the propaganda out and they're losing the war, so they need like furthered support. And it's like it's following the trend of like World War II without really referencing any real like events in World War II. So you're in this sort of like liminal World War II-esque space that is just like, okay, so Hitler went to a theater and then that's this movie. and that's the core of the movie is like Hitler, a funny thing happened on the way to the theater starring Hitler. And like that's the movie. It's fantastic. Such a simple concept that again is written in just a spectacular fashion.
Yeah, absolutely.
But to be such a simple, as if it were like a punchline joke in terms of the setup punchline. You have Quentin Tarantino minimizing this whole thing in terms of you don't need to really know who the bastards are. You just know they're badass and they'll kill Nazis. And you don't really need to know anything about Brad Pitt's character, but you get him saying one line about moonshine and all this stuff, and it's all you needed to know to like get the whole vibe right there. You don't need to know anything about any of these characters except that they're tasked for this thing that, like I said before, it's like you as the viewer are now also in on it in terms of what needs to happen now. And then you're like, but not right now. We got to we need a little bit more information.
Yeah.
Until it happens. And then they talk about it.
Yeah. Even, Shoshana's character, like you get the little bit about her in the beginning. It's not much. Bad thing happens to her. And then it's like, okay, now she owns a movie theater. And then, she's a major character. But for the most part, it's just like, hey, she is a person of Jewish heritage and she hates Nazis. And you're like, hey, that's all I need to know.
Yep. With rightful, a righteous anger that cannot be quenched.
Yeah.
Yeah. Except maybe it is.
Yeah.
Maybe it's quenched.
Maybe it's Quentin Tarantino.
Maybe it's quenched. It's horrible. We should just stop doing this whole thing.
No, the people are still out there. No,
they left at the politics joke, and then they came back, and now we did this, and they're like, wow.
They came back right at Quentin Tarantino, and he was even listening, and he was like, that's it. No, I'm done.
We had him on the horn. Just kidding. We didn't. He's busy making a film critic movie, I guess. But,
yeah.
Is there something to, I think what's cool to depart a little bit. I think when we were watching it, you mentioned like Django Unchained a little bit. And there's an aspect of Django Unchained that is way different from Bastards to me in terms of Django Unchained feeling like it has way more modern feeling references in terms of its like just whole vibe. And I don't know if that's just because like the main character is this like, beyond belief, incredible, cool fucking guy.
That's just Jamie Foxx.
And I'm like, that is just Jamie Foxx. So like he will give that to that role regardless. If Jamie Foxx was in this movie, he'd do the same thing.
Oh yeah.
But there's something about Inglourious Basterds to me where it is steeped in this old filmmaking style until you get like the Stiglitz like title character text thing going on. But it does feel like there is a subdued special effects nature. I mean, the finale, of course, and every squib in there is beautiful. But there is a realistic nature to it. Like, it doesn't feel like a CG fest of any, right? It's sort of like, I have no problem with if CG is perfectly in there or whatever, but when it's just like they scalp people in this movie, but it doesn't feel like I'm watching something fake happening. It feels so real. Like I feel like they just actually scalped those people.
Yeah.
It's disturbing. So I'm wondering if there's like a reason, and I obviously you won't know, but Quentin,
hey, maybe I will.
It'd be like, I wonder if he had a reason for trying to portray it in this. It must be sort of like a realism try. Like he's like, if I show enough that looks real, then my surreal fantasy of this happening will be sold more, maybe?
Well, I wonder if it's like what they did with Baby Yoda in the Mandalorian series, where they were like, all right, we know that we have the technology to do a CG Baby Yoda, but CG is harder to pay off than it is to have a practical effect, even when it looks kind of goofy, like Baby Yoda flying through the air. And and so I wonder if it's kind of that thing where it's like, to sell the atrocities of what was happening in the time and to keep it from being, a goofy goof fest of a movie, to keep it steeped in reality by having most of this movie be practical effects and practical scenes and practical sets.
Yeah.
That's all I can really think for that.
I think you're right, because there is a surrealist nature to just the vibe of the story, but I think that also is a touch just all of Quentin's, Tarantino's films, in terms of something off is happening in this tale, and we're gonna pull that thread until it all unravels. And the fact that he's able to pull that off in like a pure World War II vision, to me, was incredible.
Yeah. I think it also does a good job of paying homage to, you have the latter part of the movie where they're just watching a movie that was supposedly filmed in, the 1940s.
Right.
And this whole movie does a good job of feeling like it was produced and made in the 1940s. It feels like something that if you put it in black and white, it could have come out back then. And
I probably shot it on the like right film and stuff too. I know he's usually a stickler for that sort of thing.
Yeah, a Hugo stickler. That's right. We got a second one in there. So, and I think that's another reason why I kind of compared him to Wes Anderson in this movie, is because Wes Anderson's always trying to pay homage to the movies that he loves and, the quirky little French films. And he does a very good job of that. He always does a good job of selling his vibe. And Tarantino, too, when he does a cowboy movie, he sells it really well. When he does a modern movie, he sells it really well. And when he does a 1940s, somehow also a Western, but not a Western, he sells it so well.
He sells the ass off this movie. Because, it almost makes me more want to go back and see some of the even like propaganda films of the time that are so clearly present in this type of film, where because even a lot of modern films, like Saving Private Ryan or something, there's like a tinge to it where you're trying to get something else out of the war, and you're like, oh, but in this story we have a little guy named Ryan, we gotta say. And there were so many films, I think, of the time, like made in the, like 50s, 60s maybe, that were more true to just like trying to portray the war after it had happened, but in like a realistic, like as real as they could get. And there's a lot of failings in those older movies, at least the ones that I've seen, where there are like successful shots that like look really good, and they had very limited special effects back then, and then you can like expand that out to Tarantino in this film and just be like, this feels like the logical conclusion to those types of like war movies of the time.
Well, it's interesting because now I'm thinking about it. I haven't seen many films from 1940s or, even really anything around that time. The only thing that really like comes to mind is like Nosferatu, which was 1917, but you know,
Yeah.
um,
Citizen Kane. It's an older one.
okay, yeah. I mean, there's a couple I've seen from that time, but my point I'm getting at is I recently watched The Great Escape, which is a World War II film from the late 60s. And I think this movie did a really good job of, although being a World War II film, and most World War II films that came out were from that late 60s period where, they had all the technology from World War II laying around. They're like, hey, let's just make some movies about this. It'll be cheap.
Yeah.
And so when most people think of World War II, they think of those movies, the movies from the 60s. But this movie did a good job of feeling more like a movie from the 40s than it did a movie from the 60s about the 40s, or a movie from modern day even about the 40s.
Yeah. I completely agree with that sentiment. And I think a key thing that plays into that is the incredible sets and the theater when it is all decked out in Nazi regalia and banners and posters and all this stuff. Every key detail in that sequence is so good. There's even like a German poster for the propaganda film that's like in one shot. But the fact that it's there is so key to just the detail and minutia that people went to in the like set design and costumes and stuff. It's so, because there's no moment where you're taken out of it. You're just in this impeccably dressed set that is so fun.
Even when you have the whole movie that has that kind of like classical feeling soundtrack to it, thanks to, technically Ennio Morricone. And then you have the David Bowie song that comes on, and it's kind of like, you're like, record scratch. You're like,
here.
what? But it like, although you would expect to be like, oh, what's going on? Why is David Bowie here? It works.
It works.
Yeah. And
it's a good needle drop.
Somehow it's a needle drop, but like to a record that just perfectly syncs up with what you were watching.
Yeah.
It's Wizard of Oz and Dark Side of the Moon. It works.
Yeah, it is almost like somebody just put on a song and you're like, did you mean to? Oh, it's working. Shut up. I'm watching.
Yeah, we're watching this. I'm like, is my Spotify playing? What the hell?
And then you see David Bowie like in the credits and you're like, oh my God, it was in the movie. Whoa. Yeah, that one's funny for sure because it's, I think, the only lyrical song as well. I think the rest is just score.
Yeah.
There might be another one before that, but I don't remember.
Well, there was another song that sounded kind of modern. I couldn't place it, and the little subtitles didn't give me a prompt for what the song was called. But it was the scene with Shoshanan, the German soldier, in the camera room. There was like, it sounded different than everything else we had heard up to that point.
Right. Yeah.
And like my brain recognized that it sounded different. It didn't take me out of the movie, and I was like, "Oh, dude, this sucks." But
I need 1940s. It needs to sound like. No, I know what you're talking about. There, just the whole ending sequence. It is where it gets more like experimental in terms of how the format of the film is even presented. The execution of what needs to happen feels so grand that they're, if you're going to do that to a set, if you're going to do that to all your actors and stuff, you got to go out with a bang. And it is sort of disorienting in a way. But like you were saying before, there's those shots. There's a specific shot where it follows Shoshana out of the projection room. And it does the like over the wall thing because it's a movie. You can just do it.
Yeah.
And it's that whole sort of thing where that theater has a sort of ethereal, like the most surreal vibes are in that theater because I think it's like prepping you for what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
So you're just sort of put in this, like, you're a ghost. Here you go. Out. You're in the roof. You're in the walls. What's gonna happen?
You can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, dude, give me an over-the-top shot any day.
It's so good. It's classic movie making too, right? Because it's like we're revealing that this is a set, but because you're so immersed in the movie, we can just do it anyways.
Yeah.
And I love that. Because you're not taken out of it. You just get to sort of go on this crane ride.
You're just up there, a little ghost, watching the movie.
You just get to watch a cool ass shot. And this, again, the set, the theater set is so good.
It's so good.
I love the theater.
Dude,
I love the theater.
I love all the that's something I don't say a lot about movies is like, oh, I love each of those sets. Or even like, oh, I remember this one particular set. But like, there were so many great sets in this movie where you're just like, I feel like I'm a little ghost in the 1940s and I'm sitting here at the table with Hans Landa. He sucks, but I'm sitting here. And like, you know, you got the little coffee shop where she's reading. You got that place where they're interrogating the Nazi soldiers. You got that wine cellar where Hans is talking to Aldo at the end. Like,
oh, yeah.
Each of those things.
The bar.
Yeah, the bar. They're all just like wonderful little places. And you're like, I just want to sit down there and read a book.
That's France.
That's France.
It looks like you want to schedule a trip to France. But after you're done scheduling those plans, Aaron, I'm going to ask you the big question of the episode. What do you think?
Hold on. I'm scheduling.
Sorry. Yeah. Did you get it?
Yeah, I'll
6
put that
years from now?
You had a question?
Would you say Inglourious Basterds 2009, would you tell people to watch or not watch this film?
I would say, why haven't you already watched this film? Why were you not sitting next to me in the theater? Go watch this.
Well, that was your dad.
Yeah, and you. So
and me.
Yeah.
We sandwiched you. It was a big... You had the popcorn.
There still should have been people on either side of you guys, and it should have been the people who are listening to this right now.
I looked to my right. Nobody. Empty seats.
Oh, no, it was just us. No, this movie's absolutely a watch. Just the fact that you got Nazi killin', you put Nazi killin' in a movie, I will be there for it. It's just a charming Wes Anderson style. I'm going to keep saying it.
Quentin? He didn't even do this one, huh?
Yeah. Wait a second. This was a Wes Anderson movie. No, it's a very fun movie. It's a very, very fun movie. I don't want to spoil it. Just go watch this movie.
I'm in the same boat. I'm sorry. I'm answering my own question.
Yeah, I'm not even going to ask you. Go.
I say watch it. I agree. I think if you haven't seen the culmination of what this movie becomes at the end, you absolutely need to treat yourself with that one, because whether you're a fan of gratuitous anything, you need to see the gratuity that is the end of this movie. You absolutely need to. It needs to exist in your brain box forever.
Yeah. This is absolutely one of my favorite Quentin Tarantino movies. The only one that is right next to it is Django. I love that movie to no end. But this movie is just phenomenal. People will say...
It's stuck with me since 2009, for sure, because of the ending being as fucking rock solid as it is.
Yes. Yeah. People will say Pulp Fiction is his best. People will say Reservoir Dogs is his best. They're fine films.
I think his modern films are fine.
This movie is on a different level, and, you know, it's great. It's great.
It's so fucking good. It's like I want to be restrained when talking about it, but when we saw it in 2009, we were gobsmacked because we were like, wait, did we just read a book, a long thing about the Inglourious Basterds, and why did your dad take us to this movie? I feel like he's really treated us today. It's so special. But yeah, I distinctly remember leaving the theater and just like being in awe of the movie. I think I was in shock too. I was just like, oh, they didn't.
Yeah.
But they did, folks.
Yeah.
That movie happens.
This movie, like, is one of those movies that I will gladly talk about and not feel like I'm going to oversell it, because even with being restrained right now, I'm not overselling it. And even if I wasn't restrained and gave you every spoiler in the movie, it wouldn't be a spoiler because you'd see it and you'd be like, this is a great movie. And yeah, we saw it in 2009. I can't say that I've seen it since. I wish I had, because
I know.
Oof.
I think it's been on like a wish list of mine. It's like, I'm gonna buy that DVD one day, and then I never did.
Yeah, I know a couple weeks ago when we were looking for movies, I saw it on Prime, and I was like, oh, we're gonna watch this, and it was like, oh, I'm actually on Freevee, and then I was like, no.
That's a plug for whatever the opposite of Freevee is.
Yeah, Prime. Hey, pay for your movies.
But I think that's gonna do it for this episode of Too Much Popcorn.
Too much popcorn.
Too much
That's
popcorn.
This one. The movie review
that
podcast.
That is this one. I ate so much popcorn, Aaron.
Oh,
I'm
me too.
so sick after this one.
I was sitting in the theater. I ate the popcorn.
I ate so much. This time, this movie was so engrossing, I didn't miss a single kernel. They're all in my mouth. I ate way too much. Is that we have our technical rating scale is how empty the popcorn is.
All the popcorn, some the popcorn.
How much is it on the floor? That's the real thing we have to figure out at the end of the episode.
Yeah.
We'll never know because it's fake. I haven't eaten any popcorn and I feel fine. Haha. But thank you so much for listening to this episode of Too Much Popcorn, where Aaron and I talk about movies, and that's this one. Again, we're pushing for those Spotify listens. Give us a follow on Spotify, and then we'll show up in your podcast. Ooh, ooh, Spotify, and you can listen wherever you want to listen. Again, we're just pushing for Spotify because then maybe we can actually get those sweet pundit ads.
Yeah.
We've really
2024.
been Either way, thank you so much for listening. That's going to do it. Have a good one. Leave a review wherever you want if you have the time. And have a good one. Bye.
Arrivederci.